Hi, and welcome to another episode of the South Texas Power Lunch. My name is Matt Duke. I'm the managing attorney of the South Texas Business Lawyers. And today we are talking with Cindy Garcia. Cindy is a very unique individual here in our community because she is a part of the gig worker economy and is also a gig worker herself. She is a tax preparer here, helping a lot of gig workers deal with their tax issues, which they may or may not be aware of as being a sole proprietor. And she's also a part of the gig economy by doing refereeing for wrestling at the local, state, national, and even collegiate level. So it's very interesting to hear from someone that's on the front lines talking about some of the lessons learned. And there's some interesting stories here too about refereeing wrestling. I hope you enjoy. So thanks so much for coming on to talk with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm pretty interested in this. I'm a wrestling person, but I'm not necessarily the kind of wrestling that you're doing, but I know a lot about it.
Okay. A
lot about those type of sports. But tell everybody a little bit about your just background and you're a tax preparer. Kind of give some people some background on your business and what you do.
So I started as a tax preparer working at Liberty Tax about 5 years ago, and then last year was the first time I decided to go off on my own. Okay. So I do have a small franchise, 5-Star Income Tax, and it's basically the seat. We have a co-working space. We have an office off of 281 and Blanco Road. Okay. And the reason why I started doing this is because taxes is actually an inherently gig job. And it gives me a lot of time to focus on what I do, which is being a wrestling official. So being a wrestling official, I started out 7 years ago. I started out as doing high school folk style. So you'll see me, if your kids are wrestling, I'm sure you've seen me. I'll be at Churchill or I'll be at Reagan, and I'm the female wrestling ref. Everybody knows me. And then over the years, I started doing more USA wrestling, so I started doing Olympic styles. And then I started traveling to all these tournaments. Like I just came back from Milwaukee yesterday because I did junior duels. And that's pretty special for me because that's the first time that I actually was a mat lead at a national tournament. And that can be pretty... That's hard. So that was interesting. So I've been doing that last 7 years. And then 2 seasons ago, I started doing NCAA. Okay. And I'm one of 3 females in the entire country refereeing NCAA college folk style. Well, that's fascinating. So, you have 2 businesses then, right? You have the wrestling, there officiating. There are 2 Schedule Cs. Yes, that are out there. So what did you wrestle in when you were younger? I didn't, but I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 2009. Okay, that makes sense. And then wrestling found me. I'm originally from South Florida. Okay. And I moved to Texas, and then a friend of mine, she was a college wrestler, and she wanted to ref, and she was like, well, let's do it together. And I was like, I don't know anything about wrestling. And she's like, no, let's do it. And the association was having their meetings at my martial arts gym. So I started doing it, and then she quit, and I ended up staying. It's interesting. My father was a soccer official and reffed all over the place, and he got into it because I played soccer, and I reffed for a little bit, and then I got out of it, and then he stayed into it for 25 years. I play soccer, but I don't do the reffing. That's the dark side, as I always call it. But it's a fascinating, people don't think about the side hustle of officiating in sports, and people kind of dismiss the referees and don't realize, these are business people that are out there, as professionals doing their job. So in 2009, you got going with doing the officiating. Was it just youth at that time? Well, I started in 2000 in the 18-19 season officiating, and then jiu-jitsu I started doing in 2009. Okay. So I've been rolling around on the mat for 15 years now. Okay. I'm going to go for my brown belt this year. Oh, nice. It doesn't take that long, but I took time off where I just said I just want to do no-gi and I want to do wrestling. And for a while there, I was trying to get MMA fights. And at one point, I even got down to 153 pounds. Wow. And the most I could get, I've done the fighter developmentals, but I was never able to get past that. But I did prove to everybody, hey, I can make weight. This is fascinating to me. We fight on paper and in courtrooms, not hand to hand for that. Sometimes some people may want to be hand to hand with me, but that's okay. So what got you into the tax preparation and the franchise? How was that experience to buy a franchise? So I was initially trying to grow my own web design business. Okay. And, I was going through what all the other freelancers were going through. We were going through the feast or famine. Either I would have like 3 clients or I would have no clients.
Right.
And then tax season came around and that was the only job I could get. So I said, I need a steady paycheck.
Sure.
And I just ended up being really good at taxes. So I just stayed. And then except for one season, I've been doing taxes. And then the process of a franchise, it was just someone that I met.
Okay.
We talked about it. And then, he offered me the contract and I said, this is something I can do.
Got it.
And, one of my criteria was we need to have an office. I'm not doing taxes at the Starbucks.
Right.
So then that's because I felt like at that time, I felt like I had enough knowledge where I can get my own clients and I can impress them. And now I'm going for my enrolled agent. So I'm going to start studying. Once I have one last tournament, I'm going to Junior Nationals in Fargo, North Dakota in 2 weeks. And that'll
be nice this time of year.
Yes, it does get cool. At night, it'll get down to the 60s. It's the biggest wrestling tournament in the country.
Oh, wow.
I'll be there for 10 days.
Oh, wow.
It'll be every single day. We have morning, afternoon, and evening sessions.
Nice.
And I'll be on the mat all day long.
So for your tax preparation business, what are your typical clients, customers there? Are they individuals, business owners, a mix?
Individuals for now. I want to do more business owners, and that's the reason why I want to go for my enrolled agent and for more education. I think anytime you deal with money, you should have some type of designation, some type of education. And I'm a big believer in education. I think if you're going to do taxes, you should have at least a CPA or an enrolled agent designation. It's important.
Got it. So with the individuals, are any of them sole proprietors or?
A mix.
Okay.
W-2, sole proprietors, people that do DoorDash.
Right. Kind of talk about the gig economy. What's one of the biggest ahas that unfortunately people realize when they go to do their taxes if they're in the gig economy like DoorDash?
Expenses.
Right.
Expenses. I get so many people that come in and I ask them, how many miles did you drive? What's the cost of your phone? I don't know. I don't have it. I don't know. And I'm like, well, I always have to tell them it's a business.
Right.
Once you start doing DoorDash, that's a business. Or people that clean houses, they'll tell me, but I don't understand. I just clean houses. I'm like, yeah, but you're a 1099, so it's a business. So now you're in charge of your insurance. You're in charge of paying for your own equipment.
Right.
That's all you. So that's always that conversation I have to have.
You don't have to pay so much in taxes. You can write off some of that money so you're not paying the full amount. It happens quite a bit, I would assume.
Yes. And that's another thing people don't realize, that when you're an official, it is a business.
Right.
And the more you do it, the more educated you have to be on your taxes, the more educated you have to be on the type of expenses, what you can and cannot write off.
Travel, that sort of thing. When you're going to those, there's a lot of expenses that can come in there.
Yes.
Nice. So a little bit on the back to the officiating and stuff. What you said you had some stories when we first got here. I'm just kind of curious as to at least one of them.
Okay, so my favorite story was, the directors finally trusted me to be a head official at developmental tournaments. So before we do the national tournaments, we'll have local tournaments in Austin. We have local tournaments in Houston and Dallas, and they finally trusted me to be the boss. And they're like, okay, Cindy, it's you. And I remember being so nervous because I know the coaches and I know the type of drama that I'm going to get myself in. And, there's that feeling of, don't mess it up. Because when you do mess it up, people don't give you another opportunity. So it's basically like, here's your shot, take it. You have to impress us if you want to get bigger, more high-profile tournaments.
Right.
So I had a situation where I was down officials, and I remember the tournament director was like, well, we got 6 mats to cover, figure it out. So I had to put the student athletes on there. So I had the student athletes that would wrestle, and then when we were done wrestling, they would jump on the mat and they would ref for me. And I was filling in for some of them, and then a coach came up to me and he was like, yeah, I need to talk to you. This is a head official thing. And I'm like, well, what is it? He's like, well, my wrestler got twisted. And I'm like, well, there wasn't a video. This is not a video review challenge tournament.
Right.
If I was on the mat, I would have disqualified him. So he didn't like my answer. So he actually went above me and called the regional director and let him know what was going on. So they called me and they were like, yeah, he told me if you see something, they showed me the video and they're like, if it looks like what had happened, go ahead and DQ him. So I watched the video and I'm like, I told the tournament director, yeah, DQ him. He's out of the tournament.
Wow.
And then I had his coach come up to me and they were like, well, why did you DQ my kid? And I was like, well, and they're like, yeah, but there's no video challenge procedures. And, these coaches are really intelligent. Mm-hmm. They will, for me, it's a humbling experience because I didn't grow up wrestling. I don't have their experience. So now I have to talk to people that are much smarter than me and explain to them the decisions that I have to make.
Right.
So I was completely tongue-tied. I had to grab another official that had head official experience, and we both had to talk to him and explain to him what was going on. And finally, at the end of the day, I finally just said, because he says so, the officials director just told me to do it. So that's what it looked like on camera. That's brutality. He gets DQ'd from the tournament.
Wow.
So ultimately, he just accepted the answer and he stopped talking to me. And for days, I was so worried. I thought I had made the wrong decision. But the best compliment I got that day was someone called me and they were like, "Hey, Cindy, we just wanted to see what you were doing. We didn't hear anything about you." Then I'm like, okay, that's what you want to hear as a referee or as a head official. No one had anything to say about you.
Right.
That's when you know you've done your job. And then that's when I started to feel better. But that's kind of one of the crazier things. I've had fights break out. And
wow.
And I think that's what people worry about as a female official, that you're not going to be able to control that mat.
Got it.
So I actually had that today. I got my shot at junior duels. They gave me like a duel. What a duel is, 2 teams. So it was Wisconsin and I believe it was Iowa, and it was like 3rd place, copper, bronze, and they were like, "Okay, Cindy, you're the X, so you're the one in charge of that mat." And I could feel like my stomach turning a little bit because it's like a big deal to be in charge of a mat when you're at a national tournament. And then everything was going good, and then one of the matches started, and one of the guys started to get kind of chippy and started pushing the other guy around, and he went for a shot. They went straight into one of the tables. Paddles flew, the table flew, and then they almost broke into a fight, and I just jumped on the mat and I'm like, "Hey guys, stop, get away, stop fighting, wrestle clean." So it's just stuff like that I've had to deal with.
It seems like it's exciting. It's a lot like soccer. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff on that. Let me ask you a little bit more about the tax preparation stuff, just because I think there's a lot of small businesses, sole proprietorships there. What are some other things that a sole proprietor should know when filling out their taxes?
Besides the
expenses, which is a big one, right? What else do they maybe sometimes miss?
Insurance.
Okay.
A lot of them don't buy liability insurance, and that's really important.
Right.
They miss what type of clients. They don't do their due diligence and feasibility, and can I get clients, and what type of clients do I want? And the scalability. Can I actually scale this up? These are some of the things that I've talked about. I've seen people with DoorDash making $80,000-$90,000 a year on DoorDash.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can make over $100,000 a year driving Lyft.
Wow.
And I have seen those 1099s.
Wow. So, but does that even include the cost? Like after they take all their expenses out, they net that, or is that just the revenue they get?
That is the gross.
Okay.
And then the cost. Mileage helps out a lot because the IRS pays, I believe, 55 cents, 60 cents a mile. So that helps them reduce the cost.
Reduce their tax a lot.
And it's wear and tear too, because if you made 100,000, then it's about 1 to 1.5. So you probably put 150,000 miles on your car that year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So then there's the wear and tear of the car.
Right. So there's a lot of things that people should do because they don't need to go pay the full $100,000 in taxes to the court. What else? Is there anything else that you run into a lot with people that are in the gig economy or sole proprietors?
Negative numbers.
Explain that.
For example, when I went to SA Launch, when small businesses go and they talk to me about taxes, I've noticed that a lot of people, and this is why I talk to you about it, they create their LLCs too quickly.
Okay.
And now they have to pay the state. And now they have to get their taxes done. And sometimes they didn't make enough to do their taxes.
That's right.
But now they do. And that's what I talk to them about. I'm like, because people automatically assume, okay, I have a business, I have to get my LLC now.
Right, which there's a trade-off to that. I mean, I have a lot of people come to me and they'll say, I want a holding company and I want 2 operating companies. That's fine, and we bucket risk from a legal standpoint, and we want to protect risk. But if you do too much, I mean, some people charge like $1,200 for one tax return. Well, times that by 3, you just spent $3,600 doing taxes. Does it benefit you? And some people with LLCs, same thing, right? Do you have to pay the $1,200? And that's why a lot of sole proprietors, like in the gig economy, they're not going to set up an LLC. They're just going to go ahead and do that because it doesn't make necessarily the sense to them. But it is a trade-off. It sometimes surprises people in a big way when they do that. Now TurboTax has gotten better, to do the business stuff of it. It couldn't do it before, which is a little bit helpful, but still, if you don't understand it, you don't understand it. You need a professional to help you with it. So it can still be scary. You can just be guessing a lot of times on those softwares.
Yes. And that's why people, because they didn't make a lot of money. So what they'll do is that they'll go out, like, for example, a travel agent, she'll go out and she'll spend $3,000. I spoke to a client, potential one, $3,000 on education.
Okay.
She didn't have any clients that year, which is normal.
Sure.
But now she has to file her taxes, so now she's down $6,000.
Right.
And I always tell people, that 2 out of the 5 years, if it's more than 2 out of the 5 years and you're in the negative, they reclassify you as a hobby. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So certain deductions you can't take.
There has to be an expectation of a profit.
Exactly.
That's right.
So, you're better off not doing your taxes, don't get an LLC, don't do your taxes, and then just eat the cost and having to file. Now it's the $3,000 that you spent. Now, because you're an LLC, we're going to charge you $1,000.
Right.
And I've told them that because they've come to me complaining. I'm like, I'm going to charge you $1,000. Well, why? Because you have an LLC.
That's cheap compared to what I've seen before. But it's just people have to understand there's a cost to have a business, and sometimes you need it, right? Because paying $1,000 to you versus having a personal lawsuit.
Yes.
I've got other tax preparers, accountants that have been sued personally.
Yes.
At that point in time, you're personal.
Yes.
So, the Lyft driver, at least he's got insurance just like any other driver to protect him. But if you're a professional doing something else and you get sued by a customer or a client, it's just you. There's no protection. They can go after your house unless there's a homestead or anything like that, any assets you have, which can be really, really scary. So there's a trade-off, but nothing's free, right?
This is the first time I've had to pay for E&O insurance.
Okay.
I had to pay for an FBI background check.
Oh, wow.
To do all this, yeah. Because they want to make sure that there's no embezzlement in your background. I have to pay for my P10 every year. I have to pay for educational courses. But I already knew all these things coming in. A lot of people, they don't realize the cost of business.
Right. Budgeting really, really helps doing your homework to make sure you know what the budget looks like, which includes some legal. You can do it for free, but you'll realize too, if you didn't do it right, especially if you have customers or another partner or something like that, when you find out, it could be really devastating, kind of like doing your taxes on your own. When you find out you didn't do it right, it's usually when the IRS is knocking on the door.
Exactly. And I always tell people, if you come to us and you throw us a bunch of paperwork, we're going to charge you more. I always tell people, if you have a Schedule C, bring in your P&L statement. Just let me do the data entry.
Right.
I don't want to have to ask you what you spend money on. If you don't know the monthly cost of your phone, then probably not. You probably don't want to be in business, in my opinion. If it's like simple things, simple expenses, maybe this is not for you.
Yep. The bringing the shoebox in, nobody does that anymore. And if they do, they pay a fortune for it.
You'd be surprised.
Oh, there's still shoeboxes.
I've seen the big folders with papers, and people will just come in and they just start throwing papers at me. I've had people tell me because everybody always has their W-2 on their phone, and they ask me, I'll ask them, okay, email it to me, and they'll ask me, well, I don't know how to use my Gmail. Okay. So it's like, and then I have to have my conversation, how to attach it, put an attachment in their email and send it to me. So, there's still a lot of people that struggle with their taxes, even at the basic level.
Right. So, a couple of questions here at the end that I was thinking about is we do a lot, we're here at Geekdom talking here. There's a lot of startups here. And so for a lot of startups, you've got a lot of young entrepreneurs that are putting it together. What's the advice you would give them for thinking about how they're going to do their taxes this year as they've put their startup together? What's something that they should be thinking about?
How they're going to structure their business.
Okay.
Keep your expenses, be very, detailed oriented, keep a folder, make sure that you know how much money you're spending, how much money goes in and out of your bank account. You wouldn't believe how many people I've spoke to and they don't know how much money they spend. They don't know how much money they're making.
Right. Excel spreadsheets work if they at least can tell you what those are there.
Yes.
Well, that's great. Well, leave us with another story with regard to the wrestling, because I'm fascinated.
I guess I could tell you maybe like what it was like for me as a female. It was really hard for me to break into this. I'm a grappling nerd. I've been grappling for 14 years. And for me, my biggest motivation of doing these tournaments is that I'll see some of the stuff that these wrestlers are doing, and I'm like, you know what? I could do that in jiu-jitsu. I can do that. I'm going to try that. But I guess for me, it was hard breaking in. A lot of people didn't want to help me. You know, there were people that just told me to my face, like, you're too old for this. You can't do this. And, you know, I pushed very hard to get to where I'm at today. I've done every style of wrestling. I've done beach, which is actually quite fun.
Beach?
Yes, there's beach
on
wrestling.
the beach.
Oh, yes. There's
How do you not have it where somebody throws, you know, sand in the eyes?
Yes. They are throwing each other on the sand. And it's international. They have World Series of Beach.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. I mean, I guess. This is a new world. I've got some friends that are in, you know, mixed martial arts, but not a whole lot of wrestling. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm sure it has been a lot for you to get, you know, through all of that. Any other good stories you got?
It's just like having the opportunity to be on the main stage with the lights, having some of the best wrestlers, being able to officiate D1 wrestlers. Trying to think of some crazy stories, being banned from tournaments.
Oh, okay. Parents don't like that, get a little upset.
Oh, there you go. Now you're reminding me of the parents. So in youth, we've actually had situations where parents get into fistfights.
Oh, wow.
And there was a few years ago, there was a youth tournament where it was like, because 8U, one kid started crying, and then the dad came, pushed the other kid off, then the mom came, punched the dad in the face, and they got into a fist fight. And they had to call the cops on mom and dad for fighting. And then we found out later that the kid was crying just because his headgear didn't fit.
Oh, wow. Well, there you go, insurance, right? If you're a venue, if you're going to be running any sort of sports, you got to make sure you have insurance because you never know what kind of crazy stuff is happening. Well, I just wanted to thank you for coming by here. It's been great stuff for the tax. We don't really have a whole lot where we get to tell people about tax, but it's been great to be able to educate people, especially the gig economy, because there's a lot of gig economy that's out there. Yes. And they just don't think about it. So thank you for coming on to talk about that.
I think people get into the gig economy I feel like the gig economy has been glamorized, and people don't realize it's hard.
It is.
You know, there's been many times where I'm like, can I just go get a job? It's just easier for me to go to work and be able to leave work and not think about it and just collect a paycheck. But to really make the gig economy work, I feel like you have to be very educated. You have to have a lot of grit.
Yep.
You have to be able to overcome a lot of obstacles.
Yep.
Which, you know, like you have to deal with, you know, learning how to work with people, knowing how to talk to people, and all that really takes a special person. Not everybody can do it.
That's right. That's right. It does take a special person. Well, thank you again for coming on to talk about this. This was fun. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the South Texas Power Lunch. It is great for us to be able to showcase people from across our community that are doing great things and interesting things that you may not have heard about. And as part of our mission to educate, support, and advise every small business and startup here in South Texas, you know, we want to make sure that we're adding value for you and value here to the community. And we appreciate you watching our podcast. We'll see you soon.